Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to week 10 of the Reddit League. We are in season 4, and we are getting towards the end here on this one. My name is Zotomo, and I'm joined, as always, by Calamity.
Hello.
And our special guest is none other than Division One's own Chicago Geographer. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. Really excited to get into this one. We have a lot of playoffs to talk about, as well as heading into the final week for Division 2 and 3. But because we have you here, Chicago, even though Division 1 is on a bye week, kind of taking it easy, recuperating, getting ready for that playoff run, we're going to talk about your relegation match with Bulgar here towards the bottom of the table for you two. The map is going to be a world map.
Going to be AI generated world as always for the playoff matches. Yep.
And how do you feel about heading down into this one against Bulgar, Chicago?
Yeah, honestly, I can't really predict how it's going to go. I feel like there's a solid chance for it to go either way here. Bulgar is a really good player, and it's definitely not going to be an easy win for me. And also, I'm going to be in England, actually, playing on a different computer with possibly a less than ideal internet connection. So hopefully that won't hinder me too much. But yeah, I'm going to be trying my best here. But it's definitely not going to be an easy matchup for sure.
Yeah, Calamity, as you take a look at these stats, Chicago does have a slight advantage in terms of a best score and aces, but averaging across the season, Bulgar has the advantage there. And kind of the record's very weird, given that Chicago and Bulgar are both having quite a few draws this season.
Yeah, Chicago is quite far ahead actually in terms of points towards the end there. It's been pretty close throughout most of the season, but in the last few weeks, Chicago gained a bit of a gap towards Bulgar. A bit unfortunate maybe even for him to end up in a relegation zone with 14 points, which is not bad. Only 3 points away from the playoffs, actually. But yeah, as you said, stats-wise, they're not too far apart from each other if you ignore the record. Average points-wise, Bulgar even ahead. They played against each other in Africa, if I remember correctly, where Chicago won. Not by far, but by a few hundred points, I think. And yeah, so maybe if we get a world seed with 5 Africa locations, maybe there's a bit of an advantage there. But I think, yeah, as Chicago said, it's going to be difficult to predict really on a world map. I think both of you are capable of getting a 25k, and it just depends on the seeds and the locations. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's like one location, I don't know, Indonesia, Philippines, or something like that, that's going to decide who ends up as the winner here.
Yeah, I think if we have a more odd location, and it's going to definitely make the scores a little bit lower. If we get 5 pretty nice country locations, it's going to be really close, and it could come down to a single thing for that. But and besides this matchup, Chicago, you returned to Division 1 after a season in Division 2. How was the season for you overall, being back in Division 1?
Yeah, I'm honestly a little bit happier with this season than I thought I would be. I ended up with 3 wins, 3 draws, 3 losses. And in terms of, the points that I earned, I managed to stay pretty close to the middle of the pack. So I'm overall pretty happy with it, given how little time I had to practice, and I also kind of had somewhat low motivation as a result of that, but I can't complain about the season at all.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely very tough competition this season. Lots of draws across the board as the players hitting that 25,000 point ceiling, meaning just, it's very tight. And yeah, your points overall, nothing to sneeze at for this season. All right. Well, let's see how Calamity did in Division 2 here. And a perfect game from you, Calamity, is kind of we should come to expect in a place like Singapore. In fact, quite a few 25Ks across the board. What's more interesting, Calamity, is that there wasn't a single draw in Division 2.
Yeah, we've had 6 draws. No, it's not 6 draws. 6 perfect scores, and they were all split into different matchups. Just say as we should have expected, it is my first draw. Not. What do I have with draws today? It's my first perfect score in Reddit League for myself, so that's very nice. And yeah, as I said, it was essentially separated into 2 groups. Did you get a perfect score? 4 points for you. Did you not? 0 points. It was a pretty difficult seed actually, and most people needed quite a lot of time. Where I say like the average Singapore seed to 25k, or like even if you miss on one round, it would be like 5 to 8 minutes if you really practiced, maybe like 9 or 10 if you didn't practice that much. And I don't think anyone did this seed in under 11 minutes. Um, I think I was the second fastest with like 13 minutes something. So that really
Mm.
shows how it wasn't just one location that was difficult. It was pretty much almost all of them that had some sort of difficulty to it. I am a bit glad that no one missed out on on any points by like very fine margins there, though, because that definitely could happen in Singapore, and we'll see some of that later on. But most of the games were pretty clear. Not just on one pinpointing mistake. The closest was Clyde, I think, who was still over 500 points behind Max, and that essentially means he was in the right area, but he probably still would have needed another like 20 seconds to get to that perfect game. Max also improves on his own record of the most perfect games in Division 2 with his third one. A lot of records in that regard this season, because mostly, well, from the maps and the seeds we've had, they've been fairly easy. And of course, there were crucial victories for him as well as for Shumi and Toll to somewhat stay in the race for promotion. And of course, for me as well, because that victory, as well as combined with a couple of other results, Guelo losing, Schludi losing, meant that I'm guaranteed promotion. Unless some, like half the division gets red carded or some specific results happen. But if anything goes as normal, I should be promoted. And a nice boost to my score differential as well. So even if it would come down to maybe a tiebreaker at the end there with some red card shenanigans, then I should be pretty good concerning that. And yeah, the only one who really had a bad week there for their chances in the season itself was Clyde, who kind of fell off there a bit and went from the sort of top group to the bottom group.
Yeah, Chicago, not a good day for the Americans across the board. Singapore proving a bit tricky for them. But yeah, Tom Paul stopping his slide, and Max, as Calamity said, picking up a third perfect game. And really, his second half of the season has been something to really pay attention to.
Yeah, for sure. This week was pretty interesting. As you mentioned, the perfect score matchups, nobody tied at all, which is very interesting. But yeah, certain players, Schludi, Guelo, will not be too happy with their losses this week. Just makes that fight for the promotion slots all that more tricky for the upcoming week. But beyond that, yeah, I can't say there's anything too surprising in the results. But yeah, just really interesting, those perfect scores all not playing each other this week.
Really interesting turn of the dice in that one. As we take a look at that table, then Calamity, yeah, you do have a 4-point advantage over Pluki between first and second there. Schludi dropping down to fourth, and Guelo down to eighth with their losses. The bottom four stay the same, but again, we've had 10 weeks, and yet second to eighth there are still only 4 points, 3 points separating them. So it's really still anybody's game for that second automatic promotion spot and their promotion playoffs. Calamity.
Yeah, definitely. From second to eighth, all of them even still have a theoretical chance of getting second. Like, you know, sometimes it's like second place third or fourth place fifth. So like eighth misses out even if they're only 3 points behind. But we don't have that here. Everyone could still get second. Toll and Guelo do need a perfect score though to be able to finish second. They can definitely still finish like third or fourth though, even without that. And who knows, maybe we'll get an easy seed and we'll have some more perfect scores. But yeah, everyone else definitely still. It could. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to like perfect games as a tiebreaker in some of these scenarios, and it's definitely going to be a super interesting last week. And at the bottom of the table, yeah, as I said earlier, Clyde falling down a bit with the second half of the season not really working out too well for him. But we have got 4 Americans back to back here in the table, which looks quite nice at least. And yeah, he's going to now have to worry about mean, he doesn't really have to worry about it. He's 3 points ahead of Patriots and far ahead in terms of score differential. So he should be fine as long as Patriots doesn't get a perfect game. And Patriots has gotten 5 aces all season. So I think the chance of that happening is relatively low. So essentially, he's just going to have to prepare himself for the relegation playoff. Whether he's going to face off against Teskotak or Patriots will still be decided in this next week. And yeah, Pastek, unfortunately, now it's been looking like this for the longest time anyway, but now is officially sealed his relegation to Division 3.
Definitely. Yeah, Chicago, any comments on this Division 2 table?
Yeah, it's really interesting how close it is still from 2nd to 8th place. Still could go really any way there. And then, yeah, at the bottom of the table, looking pretty much set for those players. Just depends on the sort of ordering who's going to be in the relegation playoff and who's going to be directly relegated. But yeah, still a really close fight for promotion. I'll be looking forward to all these matchups next week.
Yeah, so the matchups are definitely pretty interesting. We're headed to another world map as we take a look at them now. But a lot of top of the table players against lower part of the table players. Given how close things are, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. But definitely a highlight match is yours, Calamity, against Schluti, top 4 battle there. But probably another thing that's going to be really important for that playoff picture is Guelo and M the Baseman.
Yeah, definitely. I think my matchup against Schluti is interesting, mostly in the way that I have no pressure whatsoever for the last game, so I can just play very calm, and it's going to be interesting for myself as well because I haven't had this in Reddit League before. Pretty much every game I've played in Reddit League has always been for something. Since until this season, I think I've always been in a playoff game at the end of the season. So this will be a first for me. I don't know if that'll make me play much better. I don't know if it'll make me play worse. It's not on a map where you can really practice, so that means I won't practice, but also it's not really a negative that I won't practice. And Schluti himself definitely needs that win, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he does here against me for sure. Yeah, you said it, Guelo against Baseman, definitely another super interesting one. Baseman, essentially with a win, he's pretty much secured at least top 4. And Guelo needs a win as well and needs to hope that other results go his way as well if he wants to go for that small chance he still has of promotion. Very interesting as well is Pluki against Tall Impala, which has essentially the same circumstances around it, just 1 place higher for both of them. Pluki, again, here with a win, he's guaranteed to be second because he's got 2 perfect games as well. So even if, technically, maybe if Baseman gets a perfect game and a bit of score differential as well, he might come close. But pretty much if Pluki wins his game against Tall, he should be second. And Tall himself, similar situation to Coelho, but he has 1 perfect game. So maybe slightly better if it comes down to a tiebreaker. And he also still has the chance to make it into those playoff spots. On the other hand, Patriots against Clyde could be kind of interesting as well. I said it before, Clyde doesn't really have much to play for. But if Patriots somehow manages to pull out a perfect game, that suddenly puts Clyde into danger of direct relegation as well. So he can't really take it easy either. And both of them will probably also have to look at what Teskotak does against Chumi as well.
Yeah, Chicago, pretty tough matchups for the Americans, but a really interesting one at the bottom of the table with that American derby between Patriots and Clyde.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting to see if Teskotak is going to be able to pull it, or Patriots is going to be able to pull it off there. But yeah, lots of really important matches this week in the promotion slot fight, and yeah, it's going to depend a lot on just who wins, who loses there, and just sort of how it all shifts around in the end. Yeah, looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, and a world map is as predictable and unpredictable as ever, so you never know. Definitely a really interesting week to pay attention to. Well, shifting over to Division 3 and their matchups in Singapore, plenty of 25,000 scores again, and more like it though, Chicago 3 draws this time. But despite that, the kind of our players at the bottom of the table still struggling despite the more favorable conditions in Singapore.
Yeah, so this week we did have some draws in D3. Overall, pretty good scores from everybody. At least everyone was over 23,000, so that's pretty solid there. We had Seppo having his bye week this time around, which might have been a favorable thing for him. Singapore is a good map because he managed to get 25K without the obstacle of potentially drawing with somebody. So that was nice to get a good 4 points for him there. We had 2 actual wins this week where they went pretty much as expected, with LCN being very high up at the table, and then Polybos having a very strong season so far. But yeah, just other than that, pretty good week for these players.
Yeah, definitely. Calamity.
Yeah, the 2 newcomers taking each other to a draw there in Paulino and WTF. No bonus points given out to either of them. And the bonus point situation was actually very interesting because we had 2 games that finished 25k to 24,928. And Hugo got a bonus point for it. Close didn't, because Hugo was 12 meters closer than Closed was, which might be the closest miss ever, and at the same time pretty typical for Closed season. And yeah, as Chicago already pointed out, Seppo there with a nice 25k. I think it's pretty helpful there as well that he could go into the game without any pressure. Like worst case scenario, he messes up the 25k and he still gets 3 points. So I think that might have also helped him just to stay calm, and if it happens, it happens. It's a nice additional point, and he managed to pull it off. And yeah, we already mentioned 25Ks, Freckles, LCN, Barry, just kind of what we expect of them so far this season. And yeah, Radox, also what we expected from him in Singapore. Not his favorite map. But yeah, still, he at least got 2 aces there, so that's not too bad for him. And yeah, Polyboss winning, of course, against Benica, also pretty important for his season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so finally a bit of luck going Hugo's way, picking up that bonus point as we shift over to look at the table. And a much better picture here, Chicago, for the Americans, LCN and Barry Fishy Bear sitting at the top of the table. LCN at least guaranteed a promotion spot in some regard. I don't think his number 1 place is cemented quite yet. But between second and probably looking somewhere around 6th at Closed, a pretty tight fight for those remaining 3 spots. Calamity, Chicago.
Yeah, definitely. Very happy to see my fellow Americans at the top of the table there. As you said, yeah, LCN is pretty much guaranteed that 1st place or 2nd place slot. We'll see if Barry is able to leap up to 1st this coming week. But yeah, interesting results here. Again, still a pretty close fight, as you said, for the last couple promotion slots. And then we've also got, unfortunately, I think Benica is all but guaranteed relegation there at this point. Down at the bottom of the table, and we'll see if Radix and Hugo can pull off some crazy perfect score victories this week to try and sneak out of that relegation zone this week as well.
Yeah, Calamity, WTF, probably the biggest loser on the day here, dropping down quite a few spots despite drawing, and just because he didn't get a 25K, dropped down to 4th there.
Yeah, I definitely lost out on a few points there, but he's still in a position where he can get that promotion spot. LCN's almost secure. Freckles would need a perfect game to get him out of there. But he's gotten 2 already this season, and Freckles is very good on world maps, so I wouldn't put it past him if the seed lends itself to it. But even then, he'd need LCN to not pick up any points at all. And yeah, behind that, Barry's in a pretty good position. If he wins, or at least gets like 1 or 2 points, he should be fine as well in that 2nd spot. And he's also playing against Radox, so maybe not the most difficult matchup for him this week. Behind that, we've got Orboka/Polyboss, who has his free win to come in the last week. So that's another interesting scenario where, in a sort of virtual table that already kind of looks forward to next week, he's already on 23 points. So that means everyone behind in Freckles and WTF need to pick up at least 2 points to get back past him in the next week. And Freckles, the 2 points would be enough. For WTF, he probably needs 3 points because otherwise Polyboss is probably going to pick up at least the 24,000 points he needs to get past WTF in his bye game. Apart from that, close chances are pretty slim, and he'd kind of need to rely on both Freckles and WTF dropping points, a lot of them actually. neither of them. Well, Freckles could pick up 1 point and he'd still be. No, WTF could pick up 1 point and he'd still be fine. Freckles would not be allowed to pick up any points if Close still wants to make top 4. So, slim chances for him, but maybe. You never really know. Paulinho can relax behind him. His season's pretty much over. He can't really get promoted anymore. He can't get relegated anymore. So, he can play without pressure for the last week. And yeah, down there in the relegation zone or thereabouts, you can really see there how big the effect of Seppo's perfect score was. Because now he's essentially safe from Radox and Hugo as long as they don't get another perfect score in return. And yeah, Radox and Hugo themselves are relatively safe in the relegation playoffs. Radox more so than Hugo, because Radox has a lot of score differential over Benica. Benica could actually still leapfrog Hugo if he gets a win in the last week and Hugo loses his game. But yeah, from Benica's season so far, he hasn't had the best of seasons. So he'd need a surprise in last week, but you never know. Could happen.
Definitely. Let's take a look at those fixtures for the Coastal World map for Division 3. And yeah, with Freckles and WTF facing, really looking to get some points to get their promotion hopes a chance. They're up against some pretty nice opponents, Seppo and Benica there respectively, but maybe Seppo, the nicer opponent for Freckles, given that he doesn't have a whole lot to play for. Maybe the pressure won't be on him as much. But WTF up against Benica, who's fighting for his life in the final week, Chicago, might make things a little rough on a world map.
Yeah, for sure. Those are two matchups I'm definitely looking forward to. The Freckles versus Seppo match is actually fairly important for the promotion fight, as well as the relegation fight, to see if Radix and Hugo are going to be able to jump out of that zone at the end here. So that's an important match for sure. And yeah, WTF will certainly be hoping to win against Benica this week and just sort of guarantee their promotion slot there. But yeah, those are two very important matches. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what happens here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at the other end of that calamity, Hugo up against Paulinho, who doesn't have much to play for, so probably a better opponent than Barry Fishy Bear for Radox, who Barry Fishy Bear still fighting for his promotion spot, so not likely to take this week lightly.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a better opponent for him, but I think both of them are kind of already in the situation where they're going to need to focus on the relegation playoff game against each other. And this week's mostly for, gaining a bit of confidence for that. It's a world map, just as it's going to be next week in a relegation playoff game. So getting a nice score here to finish off the regular season would be good for both of them. But pretty much all the games here in this division are important for one person, with the other person needing a 25k for anything interesting to happen. The only one that slightly breaks the trend is Benica against WTF, where Benica only, in quotation marks, needs a normal win to get past Hugo if Hugo leaves week 11 without any points. Purely in terms of high scoring games, potentially, I think LCN against Close could be the most interesting one. And yeah, except for that, I think most of the results or most of the games are pretty easy to predict. Probably the closest one might end up being Paulinho against Hugo.
Very nice. Well, that will be the final week for those two divisions, and we'll set up the playoff and relegation battles to come on an AI-generated world, so 2 world maps in a row for them. But we had in Division 4 and 5, we had our playoffs already underway as we take a look at those. So the promotion playoff for Division 4 had some pretty nice scores. Steelless Nick and Diesel Calamity picking up perfect games, which see them move on to the final.
Yeah, Steelless Nick with a bit of a closer fought victory against Lunacy, and Diesel dispatched of Hexalt relatively easily, who didn't really have the greatest of performances. Hexalt, even among, as we'll see in a bit, the relegation playoffs, he wouldn't have fared too well. So surely a bit disappointing for him, but it's going to be in the. I think Hexalt was in the Division 4 playoffs last season as well, wasn't he? So he's already used to losing out on those, and he's just gonna have to go at it again next season. Let me check. Actually, no, he was in the Division 5 playoffs and won. Never mind. I knew I recognized him from. I remembered him in some playoffs, but with the other ones, it was the promotion playoff from Division 5. So he's now won some playoffs. He's now lost some playoffs. We'll see. He'll have another go at it next season. Maybe he can get up that in that season. Yeah.
Yeah, Chicago. Any takes on the promotion final? Steal This Nick and Diesel on a world map.
Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting close match for sure. They both put up a 25K this week, so they've definitely proved their skills here. I was rooting for my countryman Lunacy there, put up a good score, but unfortunately, we're just up against the 25K from Nick. Same situation there for Hexalt. Not the worst score possible, but still just up against a really strong opponent here. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this final promotion match here.
So yeah, a very nice Division 4B final for them. So either one, I think, will be very happy with that win after kind of especially Steal This Nick a bit of a slump towards the end of the season. So I'll be happy to get promotion despite that for them. At the other end of the division, the relegation battles, Theos found himself in a matchup against Pochtetli, given that Edward didn't play his match. So he had to face off against Pochtetli. But wasn't really up for the task in Singapore. On the other hand, though, Calamity, a perfect game draw for Pwn Noob and Hidekmi, separated only by 9 meters, and very unfortunate for Pwn Noob there.
Yeah, that's definitely rough. Yeah, but there's nothing you can do. It was 9 meters is the kind of distance where it's like, yeah, it's very, very close, but at the same time, it's like it's not 1 or 2 meters. So there must have been something where you were a bit off more than your opponents. And it also, I think it was like 30 something against 40 something meters. I think it was 37 to 46. So it's not like they were incredibly close and it was just a bit of bad luck. They had some rounds that were a bit further from the right location. But of course, yeah, it's definitely frustrating, and you can only hope for Pwn Noob that he will be able to rectify that in the final against Fios. And from Fios's game here against Pochtetli, and from his whole season pretty much so far, he's not really been having the best of seasons. They actually played each other, though, in the first week of the season in Japan, where Fios won, which ended up being his only win so far this season until Edward didn't play last week. So maybe Fios can go back to that, at least mentally, and tap into that confidence from all the way back then.
Yeah, Chicago.
Yeah, pretty interesting there. The 25K tie definitely just shows how important it is to be accurate on a map like Singapore, and also how frustrating it is to have the distance tiebreaker on such a small, close, competitive map like that. But yeah, overall, pretty good performances here, and Pochtetli will definitely be happy with that comfortable win there over Theos. So yeah, interesting to see how that final will go as well.
Yeah, in this case, 4B having the bad honors of having both of their players in the relegation fight, the 4A players staying up. So either one of that, I definitely think Pwn Noob definitely had the better season. Really unfortunate to even be in the relegation. His total score was one of the best in the division, and he just found himself facing off against the wrong people in the wrong week. We'll have to see in this battle. So, but yeah, again, Theos, Division 3 player as of last season, so definitely has it in him to put up some good scores and stay up. So be a really interesting matchup for them as well. Well, moving over to Division 5 and their promotion playoffs, and Chicago a bit better for the American here, a perfect game for Xander against Ollie, and Hiryemini getting just under a perfect game, fighting off Troy Blade.
Yeah, definitely. Impressive perfect score there from Xander. And yeah, overall pretty good scores from everybody this week. A comfortable win there for Jamin against Quig or Royblade. And then on the this is just promotion, yeah. But yeah, for sure, definitely a good perfect score there from Xander. Happy to see that.
Definitely. Calamity.
Yeah, good perfect score for him for sure. And again, nice to see at least that these matchups were pretty clearly decided and didn't come down to just a few meters. Although, to be fair, just as a little add-on for the Division 4 relegation playoff, Hidekmi was also about 8 minutes quicker than Pwn Noob. So even if it had come down to time as a tiebreaker, the game would have still ended the same way. So at least that's nice, I guess. Yeah, Hayemine and Xander, I think they've both had pretty good seasons. And I think it's going to be a very interesting final there for sure as well.
Definitely. Xander, a long-time participant in several competitions, as well as Hermione has been in quite a few himself. So either one of them will be a big, nice addition to Division 4 next season. But at the relegation side of things, people looking to have to drop out of the Reddit League altogether and requalify. We had a couple, again, not close matches, which is good because we don't want it to come down to just a few points or meters when relegation is at stake here. Bombadil taking out Kiribati and Sky Blues taking out Clemens there, Calamity.
Yeah, in the promotion playoff, we had the 2 second place people advance, and in this one we had the opposite. We had the 2 7th placed people, so the ones that are lower down in the table in the regular season advance past the people who finished ahead of them in a regular season. And yeah, in these cases, I think Bombadil and Bombadil especially has showed some pretty good scores throughout the latter half of the season as well. So I'm happy he secured his place for another season. And Sky Blue, yeah, I think as well, having some good games here or there. Clemens not with the best score there. And I think for the final there, Kiribati against Clemens is it's pretty much a coin toss for me. Clemens has been pretty consistently average throughout most of the season, and Kiribati has been flip-flopping between great and awful for most of the weeks. So I think it'll just come down to how good Kiribati does on the seed.
Yeah, pretty much. His total score is much higher than Clemens over the whole course of the season. So, Chicago, any predictions from you here on who's going to be the last one to survive in Division 5?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a hard match to predict. Interestingly, they're both in 6th place, I believe, in their respective tables. So, yeah, it just shows that it's kind of going to be more of a toss-up, just sort of who makes the one mistake more than the other player. But yeah, definitely going to be a match to watch this week as well.
Great. Well, good luck to all of our playoff competitors at either end of their divisions. And yeah, definitely a final week in Division 2 and 3 to decide everything for them. And it will be decided on A Coastal World by Mapper. It's our third world map of this season for this one. And we're going to be along the coast. But besides that, it's really interesting that Mapper puts in the About section very isolated locations not suitable for perfect games. So we could definitely see some lower scores here, Calamity.
Yeah, true. But at the end of the day, it's still a world map, so I'm not expecting super low scores. It's just kind of the way that a lot of countries don't really have too many cities at the coast. If it's like an ocean, if it's a sea, it's a different. If it's actually seas and oceans are pretty much the same things in English, aren't they?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So it depends a bit on the country, like and on the size of the city. There are some big cities on coasts, of course, but there's also a lot of very small towns, and if you're anywhere between them as well, you can really struggle to find much useful information. The one thing you do have going for yourself always is you know which direction the water is in, which is more useful for some countries than for others. Pretty great in Brazil, Chile, or something like that. Pretty useless in the Philippines, for example. So any sort of island nation, it's not going to be the most helpful, but it's something at least, and can help you narrow down your search area a bit. Apart from that, the problem I always have with a coastal world is that most of the countries I don't particularly like in Geoguessr are coastal, and most of the ones that I do like aren't. So you've got Brazil, you've got the Philippines, you've got Indonesia, you've got the US, you've got Argentina, you've got Chile, lots of coast around there, Peru as well, you've got all of Australia, New Zealand, a lot of very difficult countries. So I definitely think a coastal world is a good map for really deciding who's the better player out of two. You also misspelled it on the screen there. You do write coastal with another A there. But yeah, I think it's definitely a suitable map for a final week.
Yeah. Yeah, Chicago, your thoughts on a coastal world? Yeah, America, lots of coastline, so maybe you get a few nice home locations for you there. Actually, you
He's
don't have
not
to
playing
play,
it.
so a bit unfortunate, but yeah. So any thoughts on how much a coastline can actually be helpful or make it more difficult for players?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, how the like that kind of aspect comes into play here. As Calamity said, yeah, lots of really difficult countries are probably going to show up on this map this week. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who has the skills and the merit to get through. But yeah, just using that coastline, trying to triangulate things with rock formations and stuff. It'll be interesting to see if any of that comes into play. But yeah, lots of tricky countries, islands are bound to show up. So yeah, this is going to be a very skill-based week for sure, I think. And definitely, as far as world maps go, probably a little bit lower scores than others. So yeah, definitely going to be an interesting matchup for sure.
Yeah. Well, we wish the best of luck to all of our competitors this week on this map. Good luck to them. And we will see you all next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.